Constantinople in the 1450s is a city of impossible contradictions. Streets paved with marble from the age of emperors, yet half the houses stand empty. The largest cathedral in Christendom still gleams with gold mosaics, but the empire it represents controls barely more than the city walls. This is Rome's last breath, and it's still the most beautiful thing in the world. For over 1,000 years, this city has been the hinge upon which the world turns, the gateway between Europe and Asia, the fortress of Orthodox Christianity, the keeper of Roman law and Greek philosophy. In the 1450s, it still holds that role, but the shadows are lengthening. Outside the walls, the Ottoman Empire grows stronger every year. Inside, the population dwindles, the treasury empties, and the certainty of survival begins to crack. Today, we're taking a tour through the Queen of Cities in her twilight hour, not to watch her fall, that comes later, but to witness what she was when she still believed in forever. To understand Constantinople, you must first understand where it sits. The city occupies a triangular peninsula jutting into the waters where Europe and Asia almost touch. To the south lies the Sea of Marmara, opening into the Mediterranean. To the north, the Golden Horn, a deep, natural harbor shaped like a curved sword, and cutting between the two continents runs the Bosphorus Strait, the narrow passage connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. Stand anywhere on Constantinople's hills, and you can see 3 continents. Fishing boats from the Black Sea coast bring grain and furs. Merchant galleys from Venice and Genoa carry spices and silk from the east. Caravans that started in China end here. Everything flows through this single point. In the 1450s, the city's population has fallen to around 50,000 people. A century earlier, it held 500,000. Entire districts stand abandoned, their mansions slowly crumbling, their churches closed. But what remains is still extraordinary. The approach from the sea is staggering. As your ship rounds the point, you see the Theodosian walls rising from the shore, 40 feet of stone stretching 4 miles across the landward side of the peninsula. Above them, the city climbs 7 hills. Domes and towers catch the morning light. Red-tiled roofs cascade down slopes, and dominating everything, floating impossibly above the skyline, the golden dome of Hagia Sophia. This is still the richest, most sophisticated city in Christendom. The streets are paved, not with dirt or cobblestones, but with marble. The aqueducts, built by Roman engineers, still deliver fresh water from reservoirs miles away. Beneath the city, massive cisterns hold millions of gallons in reserve, their vaulted ceilings supported by hundreds of ancient columns. The people who live here call themselves Romans, not Byzantines. That's a term invented by later historians. To them, this is Rome. The Western Empire fell in 476, yes, but the Eastern Empire never stopped. The chain of emperors stretching back to Augustus Caesar remains unbroken. The laws are still Roman. The administration follows Roman models. Latin inscriptions mark public buildings, though the language of the street is Greek. Constantinople in the 1450s is a living museum of the ancient world, but it's also a functioning city, and it begins each day the same way it has for 11 centuries. Let's begin our tour where every visitor begins, at the walls. The Theodosian walls are the greatest defensive system ever built. Constructed in the 5th century under Emperor Theodosius II, they have never been breached by force. For 1,100 years, they have turned back every army that dared approach. The system is triple-layered. First, a moat 60 feet wide and 20 feet deep. Then the outer wall, rising 27 feet, thick enough for soldiers to patrol along the top. Behind that, a terrace 40 to 60 feet wide, a killing ground for anyone who breaches the first barrier. And finally, the inner wall, 40 feet high, 15 feet thick, studded with 96 towers spaced at regular intervals. You notice the towers immediately. They rise above the walls every 200 feet, providing overlapping fields of fire. Defenders on one tower can support the next. Attackers can't concentrate force without exposing themselves to crossfire from multiple positions. Walk the ramparts, and you feel the weight of history beneath your feet. The stones are scarred from sieges. Arab armies camped outside these walls in the 7th and 8th centuries, hurling insults and projectiles for years before giving up. Bulgarian Khans tried. Viking raiders tested them. Crusaders, fellow Christians, even attacked in 1204 and managed to break through, not by force but by treachery and bribes. That betrayal still burns in Byzantine memory. From the walls you can see the world that threatens the city. To the west, beyond the moat, the land rises gently toward Thrace. In the 1450s, that land is Ottoman territory. If you squint, you can see the fortress of Rumeli Hizara on the Bosphorus shore, built just 2 years ago by Sultan Mehmed II. It sits directly across from an older Ottoman fortress on the Asian side, strangling the strait. No ship can pass without Ottoman permission now, but here, on the walls, you're standing on invincibility. These stones have held for longer than most kingdoms have existed. The soldiers patrolling the ramparts believe, because history has proven, that Constantinople cannot fall as long as the walls stand. What they don't yet understand is that technology is changing. Gunpowder cannons, still crude and unreliable, are growing larger. The certainty of stone is about to meet the uncertainty of a new age. But in the early 1450s, walking these battlements, the walls still represent an eternal promise. From the walls, we descend into the city proper and make our way to the spiritual center of Orthodox Christianity, Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. Approaching from the street, you're not prepared for the scale. The building seems too large to be real. The dome, 100 feet in diameter, rises 180 feet above the floor, suspended on pendentives that were revolutionary when they were built in 537 A.D. Even now, nearly 1,000 years later, no one has built a larger cathedral. Step through the bronze doors and the interior opens like a vision. Light pours through 40 windows at the dome's base, making it appear to float without support. The effect is intentional. The architect Isidore of Miletus wanted the dome to seem suspended by heaven itself. Contemporary accounts say the first Byzantine emperor to see it completed, Justinian, whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." Every surface gleams. The walls are sheathed in marble, green from Thessaly, white from the island of Proconnesus, red porphyry reserved for imperial columns. Above, mosaics cover the upper walls and vaults. Gold tesserae reflect candlelight, creating a shimmering, otherworldly glow. Christ Pantocrator gazes down from the dome's apex, his hand raised in blessing. The Virgin Mary holds the infant Jesus in the apse. Archangels spread wings in the pendentives. The smell is overwhelming: frankincense, myrrh, beeswax from thousands of candles. The air is thick with it, sacred and ancient. Orthodox liturgy is being chanted in Greek, the same language spoken here for a millennium. Oh, the acoustics are perfect. Voices rise and echo, seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. You notice the social stratification immediately. The galleries above, reached by ramps, are for women and the lower nobility. The nave floor is divided by rank. Near the front, clustered around the ambon, the raised platform where scripture is read, stand the aristocracy in silk robes embroidered with gold. Further back, wealthier merchants and guild masters. At the very rear, near the doors, common laborers and the poor stand in rough wool, trying to glimpse the ceremony through the crowd. At the center, on certain holy days, appears Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos himself. He processes through the church in purple and gold, accompanied by the Patriarch of Constantinople. The emperor is both secular ruler and, in Byzantine theology, God's representative on earth. His role in the liturgy is active. He lights candles at specific altars, receives blessings from the Patriarch, reads scripture aloud. Constantine is in his late 40s, a career soldier more comfortable on horseback than a throne. He has no children, no direct heir. His empire consists of this city, a few islands in the Aegean, and a strip of the Peloponnese. Yet, when he enters Hagia Sophia wearing the diadem and purple boots reserved for emperors since Constantine the Great, he is Caesar. The title hasn't changed in 11 centuries. There's tension in the air, though. In 1452, desperate for Western military aid, Constantine agreed to a union of the Orthodox and Catholic churches. The Pope demanded it as the price for help. So, in a ceremony held right here, Byzantine clergy acknowledged papal supremacy. The people of Constantinople consider this a betrayal of the true faith. Many refuse to attend services now. The Grand Duke Lucas Notaras allegedly said, "Better the Turkish turban than the papal tiara." The theological wound is raw. The city may stand united against external threats, but internally it's fracturing over questions of doctrine and desperation. Still, Hagia Sophia remains the beating heart of Byzantine identity. This building has survived earthquakes, fires, riots, and foreign occupations. It represents continuity with the ancient world, with the empire that stretches back to Rome itself. As long as the dome stands and the liturgy is sung, the Byzantines can believe their civilization endures, from the sacred to the commercial. Let's walk to the Forum of Constantine, the great market square that has anchored the city's economic life for over 1,000 years. The Forum is a vast oval surrounded by colonnades, anchored by a towering column topped with a statue of Constantine the Great, depicted as the sun god Apollo. The column is porphyry, imperial purple stone, and it has stood here since 330 AD. People call it the Million, the point from which all distances in the empire are measured. Around the Forum, the markets sprawl. This is where the world comes to trade. You step into a sensory overload. Merchants shout in Greek, Latin, Venetian Italian, Arabic, Armenian, and languages you can't identify. The smell is layered: spices from India, salted fish from the Black Sea, fresh bread from bakeries lining the square, the sharp tang of vinegar used to preserve olives and cheese, and underneath it all, the earthy smell of humans pressed close in the Mediterranean heat. Stalls display silk from China, already woven into Byzantine patterns. Purple-dyed fabrics, illegal for anyone but the imperial family to wear, are inspected by officials to ensure no one is breaking sumptuary laws. Pepper, cinnamon, and ginger are weighed carefully, worth more than their weight in silver. Russian traders sell furs, sable, mink, ermine. Egyptian merchants offer papyrus and exotic birds. The currency is the hyperpiron, a Byzantine gold coin that has been the standard of international trade for centuries. Even though the empire has shrunk, the coin is still trusted. Venetian ducats and Genoese florins circulate too, evidence of the Italian merchant colonies that dominate much of the trade. Speaking of Italians, they're everywhere. The Republic of Genoa maintains a fortified colony directly across the Golden Horn in Galata. Venetians have trading privileges within Constantinople itself. They live in their own quarter, governed by their own laws, paying taxes to their home republics, not the Byzantine emperor. It's a humiliation, but it's also survival. The city needs their ships, their capital, their connections to Western markets. You notice a transaction at a spice merchant's stall. A Genoese trader haggles over a shipment of pepper. The price is steep, 10 hyperpyra per pound. The merchant complains that Ottoman disruptions on overland routes have driven costs up. The Genoese shrugs. He'll pay it. In Venice, he can sell the same pound for 15 ducats. War or no war, profit is profit. Nearby, a laborer, a dock worker by the look of his sun-darkened skin and calloused hands, buys his lunch from a street vendor. Coarse bread and salted fish for 2 copper coins, maybe a tenth of a hyperpyron. He eats standing, listening to 2 old men argue loudly in Greek about whether the union with Rome is heresy or necessity. The laborer doesn't care about theology. He cares about whether ships will keep coming to the harbor, because without ships, there's no work. The Forum also hosts the city's gossip. Rumors circulate constantly. Someone heard that Mehmed II is building cannons. Someone else insists the Pope is sending a crusade any day now. A third swears the walls can never fall because God himself protects the city. An Armenian merchant mutters that anyone with sense is moving their assets to Kaffa or Trebizond before it's too late. The Forum is empire in miniature. Magnificent, cosmopolitan, resilient, and deeply uncertain about the future. From the chaos of the market, we make our way to the seat of power, the Blachernay Palace, the primary imperial residence in the 15th century, the Great Palace of Constantinople, the sprawling complex that once housed thousands of courtiers, guards, and servants, has been mostly abandoned. Too expensive to maintain, too large for an empire that has shrunk to a city-state. Constantine XI uses the Blachernay Palace instead, a more modest, by imperial standards, complex in the northwest corner of the city, near the Theodosian walls. Modest is relative. You approach through gates guarded by the Varangian Guard, descendants of the Viking mercenaries who have protected Byzantine emperors for centuries. They wear lamellar armor and carry long axes. They speak Greek now, but the tradition is ancient, stretching back to warriors from Scandinavia and Kievan Rus who took service in the 10th century. Inside, the palace is a study in contrasts. The throne room is magnificent. Marble floors, silk tapestries depicting imperial victories from centuries past, golden candelabras. The ceiling is coffered and painted with scenes from the life of Christ. The throne itself sits on a dais, flanked by mechanical lions that, when they worked, which they don't anymore, would roar and move their tails. These were built in the 9th century to awe foreign ambassadors. Now they're silent relics. But walk the hallways and you notice the silence. Rooms that should be filled with courtiers are empty. Administrative offices have a handful of clerks where once there were dozens. The imperial wardrobe, traditionally employing hundreds of weavers, dyers, and tailors, has maybe 20 people. Constantine's court still follows the ancient ceremonial. The emperor appears in specific robes for specific occasions. Purple for major religious holidays, gold-embroidered silk for administrative functions. When foreign envoys are received, rarely now, the full Byzantine protocol is observed. The envoy prostrates himself, is raised by chamberlains, and permitted to kiss the emperor's foot before presenting credentials. It's all theater, and everyone knows it. But it's theater with purpose. The ceremony asserts continuity. As long as the rituals are performed, the empire still exists in some metaphysical sense. You encounter a courtier, an older man, perhaps 60, wearing robes that have been repaired multiple times. He's a member of the bureaucracy, the system of governance that has administered the empire for centuries. He oversees tax collection in the few remaining Byzantine territories. The job is harder every year. Revenues are a fraction of what they were. He's paid in land grants now, not cash, because the treasury is nearly empty. He's surprisingly philosophical about it. Empires rise and fall, he says in cultured Greek. We've seen worse. The Latins occupied the city for 60 years after 1204. We survived that, we'll survive this. He doesn't sound entirely convinced, but he wants to believe it. In the imperial apartments, Constantine lives simply. Unlike his predecessors, he's a soldier at heart. His quarters are functional: a bed, a desk covered with maps and letters, a small altar for private prayer. He spends more time on the walls inspecting defenses than he does in the throne room. Why does an emperor with almost no territory still command reverence? Because he represents an idea larger than territory. He is the living link to Rome, to Constantine the Great, to the Caesars. The title, the ceremony, the purple boots, these are not just symbols. They are the argument that civilization itself endures. Let's descend from the palace to the waterfront. The Golden Horn is the economic lifeline of Constantinople, and walking along its shores reveals both the city's resilience and its vulnerability. The Golden Horn is a natural harbor nearly 4 miles long, sheltered from the open sea, deep enough for the largest ships of the era. Its entrance can be sealed by a massive chain, links as thick as a man's arm, stretched between Constantinople and the Genoese colony of Galata on the opposite shore. With the chain raised, the harbor is impregnable from naval attack. In the 1450s, the harbor is still busy, though nothing like its glory days. Fishing boats depart before dawn, returning by midday with nets full of mackerel, anchovies, and bonito. The fishermen sell their catch directly on the docks. A laborer can buy a meal of grilled fish wrapped in flatbread for a copper coin. Larger vessels crowd the wharves. Venetian and Genoese merchant galleys are immediately recognizable by their flags and the organized chaos of their crews. These ships are the arteries of Mediterranean trade. They arrive loaded with Western wool, Flemish cloth, and German metalwork. They depart with silk, spices, grain from the Black Sea, and alum used in dyeing cloth from Byzantine mines. The dock workers are a mix of Greeks, Armenians, and Slavs. They haul cargo in organized gangs, supervised by guild overseers who ensure no one steals from the shipments. Payment is daily, a few copper coins, enough for food and a shared bed in a dockside tenement. You notice a Genoese ship being loaded. The captain, a weathered man in his 40s, is supervising the stowage of grain sacks bound for Italy. He's nervous. Ottoman patrols on the Bosphorus have been aggressive lately. The fortresses at the strait's narrowest point can close it entirely if Mehmed gives the order. The captain has bribed his way through before, but it's expensive and unpredictable. Across the harbor, the Galata district rises on its hill. This is technically neutral ground, governed by Genoa, but the Genoese walk a careful line. They profit from trade with both Byzantines and Ottomans. They don't want to choose sides. But if it comes to war, neutrality won't be an option. Shipyards line the inner harbor. Byzantium was once a naval power. Now the yards are mostly quiet. A few small vessels are under construction. Coastal traders, fishing boats. But the great war galleys that once dominated the Mediterranean, they're expensive, and the empire can't afford them anymore. Still, the sea is hope. As long as ships can come and go, the city survives. As long as Venetian grain shipments arrive, people eat. As long as traders believe Constantinople will endure, they'll keep coming. But you can sense the fragility. One bad decision by Mehmed, one ordered to close the Bosphorus completely, and the city starves. Away from the grand monuments and markets, let's walk the residential streets and see how ordinary people live. Constantinople's neighborhoods are a patchwork of grandeur and decay. Some districts, particularly near Hagia Sophia and the forums, are well maintained. Streets are swept. Buildings are repaired. Public fountains run with fresh water from the aqueducts. But venture into the outer districts, and you see abandonment. Entire blocks stand empty. Mansions built for aristocratic families in the empire's golden age now have their windows boarded up, their courtyards overgrown. Squatters sometimes move in, but the city doesn't have the population to fill the housing stock. Where people do live, daily life follows ancient rhythms. Bakeries open before dawn. The smell of bread baking is the city's alarm clock. A loaf of wheat bread costs a couple of copper coins. Barley bread, coarser, less desirable, is cheaper. Bakers mark their loaves with stamps indicating the weight and grain type. City inspectors check these regularly. Short waiting customers is a serious offense, punishable by fines or public humiliation in the stocks. Public baths operate on the Roman model. Men and women bathe at separate times or in separate facilities. The cost is minimal. Bathing is considered both hygiene and social activity. The baths are heated by furnaces, the water delivered via the same aqueduct system that's served the city for 1,000 years. Workshops line commercial streets. You hear the hammering of blacksmiths, the rhythmic thud of weavers' looms, the scraping of tanners working leather. Guilds control each trade, setting quality standards and prices. A master craftsman might employ a few apprentices, working from a ground-floor shop with the family living upstairs. You notice a housewife, a woman in her 30s, modestly dressed in a wool tunic and head covering, bargaining at a vegetable stall. Onions, cabbage, and beans are staples. Olive oil is essential for cooking and light. She's calculating carefully. Her husband is a minor bureaucrat, paid irregularly, and she's stretching their budget. Nearby, a monk from one of the city's monasteries walks past, his black robes dusty from the street. Constantinople has dozens of monasteries, each maintaining libraries, hospitals, and schools. Monks are the city's intellectuals, preserving classical texts, copying manuscripts, and teaching Greek to the next generation. Religion permeates daily life. Church bells mark the hours. People cross themselves when passing icons set into street corners. Fast days, no meat, dairy, or oil, are observed strictly by the devout. Religious processions, carrying icons through the streets, chanting hymns, are common, especially during festivals. Beneath the streets, hidden from casual view, lie the cisterns. These massive underground chambers, supported by hundreds of columns recycled from ancient buildings, store water. The basilica cistern is the largest, capable of holding 80,000 cubic meters. Walking through it via narrow platforms is surreal. Vaulted ceilings disappearing into darkness, water reflecting torchlight, the steady drip echoing. It's a reminder that this city's survival is built on invisible infrastructure perfected centuries ago. The aqueduct of Valens still carries water from reservoirs miles outside the walls. Built in the 4th century, it's been repaired countless times but never replaced. When you see water flowing from a public fountain, you're witnessing Roman engineering that has outlasted the Western Roman Empire by 1,000 years. Daily life in Constantinople is ordinary in its details. People work, eat, pray, argue, love, worry, but extraordinary in its context. Every mundane action is performed in the shadow of history, on streets older than most European cities, in a civilization that has continuously existed longer than anyone can easily grasp. But this ordinary life exists under a growing shadow. Walk the streets in the early 1450s, and you can feel the tension. The most visible sign is the walls themselves. Sections that used to be fully manned now have skeleton crews. There simply aren't enough soldiers. Constantine has perhaps 5,000 men capable of bearing arms. including every able-bodied man from adolescence to old age. To defend 4 miles of walls properly, he'd need 5 times that number. From the ramparts you can see the Ottoman fortress of Rumeli Hisar. Built in 1452 in just 4 months, it's a statement of intent. Mehmed made no effort to hide its purpose: to control the Bosphorus and strangle Constantinople's supply lines. The Byzantines protested. The Sultan ignored them. What could they do? They lack the military force to stop construction. At night, you can see campfires on the horizon, Ottoman patrols, scouts, the sense of being watched, surrounded, and slowly squeezed. Inside the city, anxiety manifests in different ways. Church attendance has increased. People pray more, fast more, seek reassurance from clergy. There's a heightened interest in prophecies and apocalyptic literature. Some believe God will send a miracle to save the city, as he has in the past. Others interpret recent omens, earthquakes, eclipses, unusual weather, as signs of the end times. Economically, the strain is visible. Fewer merchant ships arrive. Those that do charge higher prices to compensate for risk. Grain supplies are adequate for now, but reserves are lower than they should be. If the Ottomans blockade the city, how long can it hold? Weeks? Months? Wealthy families are quietly moving assets. Gold and portable valuables are being transferred to Venetian and Genoese banks in safer cities. Some aristocrats have already sent their families to relatives in Italy or the Peloponnese. They stay because duty demands it, but they're hedging their bets. The population is shrinking. Every month, more people leave. Those who remain are either too poor to leave, too stubborn, or too faithful. They believe Constantinople has survived worse. The Arabs besieged the city for years in the 7th century. It held. The Bulgarians attacked repeatedly. It held. Even the treacherous Fourth Crusade, which actually breached the walls and occupied the city for 60 years, couldn't destroy it. The Byzantines came back. They always come back. But this feels different. Technology has changed. The Ottomans have cannons, massive bronze guns that can throw stone balls weighing hundreds of pounds. Can stone walls withstand that kind of punishment? No one knows. It's never been tested on this scale, and Mehmed is different. Previous sultans were content to extract tribute, to accept Constantinople as a vassal. Mehmed wants conquest. He's young, barely 21, brilliant, obsessed, and he has the resources of a vast empire behind him. Constantine knows all this. He's seen the intelligence reports. He's walked the walls and calculated the odds. He's sent desperate letters to the Pope, to Venice, to Genoa, begging for help. The Pope promises a crusade, but only if Byzantium submits to Rome theologically. The price of survival might be the loss of identity. In the evenings, as the sun sets and the city settles into dusk, you can hear the call to prayer from Ottoman-controlled territories across the water. It's a reminder. The Islamic world is at the gates. The question is no longer if a siege will come, but when. Still, life continues. Bakers bake, fishermen fish, monks copy manuscripts, children play in the streets. The human capacity for normalcy in the face of existential threat is remarkable. People can't live in constant crisis mode, so they go through the motions of ordinary life, even as the walls of that life close in. As evening falls on Constantinople, the city takes on a golden glow. The setting sun reflects off the domes of Hagia Sophia and 100 other churches. The waters of the Golden Horn and the Bosphorus shimmer. From the ramparts of the Theodosian walls, the view is breathtaking. A city of marble and gold, perched between seas, ancient and enduring. This is Constantinople in the 1450s. The last fragment of the Roman Empire, still magnificent, still resilient, still believing in its own permanence. The people here don't think of themselves as living in the final chapter. They think of this as another crisis to survive, like so many before. But history knows what they don't. In May 1453, just a few years after the moment we've been walking through, Sultan Mehmed II will bring an army of 80,000 men and the largest cannons ever built to these walls. For 53 days, the thunder of bombardment will shake the city. On May 29th, the walls will finally break. Emperor Constantine XI will die fighting in the streets. Hagia Sophia will be converted to a mosque. The Byzantine Empire, Rome's last heir, will end after 2,206 years. But what was lost and what survived is more complicated than simple conquest. The Greek scholars who fled westward, carrying manuscripts from Constantinople's libraries, they helped ignite the Italian Renaissance. The rediscovery of classical learning that transformed Europe was partly a gift from Byzantium's final generation. The city itself survived as Istanbul, capital of the Ottoman Empire, one of the great cities of the Islamic world. Hagia Sophia stands today, its dome still floating, its mosaics, some, still visible beneath Islamic calligraphy. And the walls? You can still walk them. Tourists take photos. Locals jog along the ramparts at sunset. The stones remember, even if the empire they protected is gone. There's beauty in twilight. There's poignancy in last moments. Constantinople in the 1450s was a city that had outlived its geopolitical relevance but hadn't lost its grandeur. It was Rome's echo, fainter than before, but still audible. And for the people who lived there, who walked these streets, who believed in the promise of the walls and the protection of God, it was home. The future was coming. They just didn't know it yet. If this reconstruction helped you see Constantinople as more than a footnote in textbooks, as a living, breathing city full of real people facing impossible choices, then consider subscribing. There are more lost cities, more forgotten eras, more moments where the ancient world held on just a little longer than it should have. I'm Jay, watching the past so we can understand the present, and together we keep history reborn. I'll see you in the next era.